For RCR Wireless News, I'm Sean Kinney, and I'm speaking today with Randall Schwartz from Wireless 2020, which is a broadband-focused consultancy firm. And Randall, I really appreciate you taking some time to talk with me today about in-building wireless. But before we get into that, can you just tell our viewers a little bit about Wireless 2020 and the type of work that the company does?
Sure. We're a broadband wireless consulting company, and we've worked with operators around the world. That's our primary focus, is working together with the operators. We help them develop their technology strategy, their network strategy. We help them develop their market strategy and their service strategies. But the one area that we're really most famous for is building business cases. So we like to help our operator clients not only make good strategic decisions, but make good strategic decisions with a very sound economic analysis behind it. So that's really where the focus is of our business case work, and the work that we've done in neutral host, that really sort of follows the same theme.
Okay, so before we get into neutral host and attendant business cases, let's just talk a little bit about in-building wireless from sort of a broad angle. I guess the current state of affairs is you have operators that are going after these in-building deployments in your stadiums and train stations and other high-value venues. And then on the other side, you have venue owners that are in a position where they need to build out their own networks and then hope to come to arrangement with the carriers to make that business case work out. But just if you can, help us understand the context of why operators can't invest in every single building that could benefit from a deployment.
Sure, and I think when we look at this in the broadest terms and what we've seen as we've looked at this in many markets, the main challenge that operators have today is to keep up with the ever-escalating demand that they have as there's just more and more smartphone usage. And, if we look at the VNI studies, for example, from Cisco, this is really not going to stop. So there is ever increasing pressure on the operators to just continue to expand their networks. And as you get to obviously, that happens first in the densest part of the networks, maybe in the urban centers. But then, as you get to what we'll call the edge of the network, and that's the in-building network, as the pressure on the operators keeps ratcheting higher and higher, the pressure to have not only good, not only to have adequate, but to have really good coverage inside buildings just keeps going up more and more. And so that's really, for us, is the overall driver from the importance of this. And so as you look at a particular building or a particular venue, like a stadium or an arena, as you were talking about, or a train station, there are multiple constituencies that come into place. There might be the building owner. There might be the people who are occupying that building or leasing that building. There might be a third party that's acting as a neutral host. And then, of course, there's the operators. So there is value to be had for all of these, and there's value to be given by all of these different constituencies that come into this. And it's one of the really interesting things about where we see the in-building market. There's no doubt that there is a demand that keeps going up. But exactly how that should be delivered and who should do what to whom, that is very much an open book, and that's kind of where we see the market today.
Yeah, so as you said, this is sort of a developing area in that there's no predominant best practice. But as these in-building deployments continue, what are you seeing in terms of venue owners that have to take on the actual network construction? How are they funding this, and how are they returning on that investment?
So that's really very much an open question, and it's interesting. And as we've spent a lot of time really over the last 2 years looking at the in-building market and working with our clients, there are several models that have sort of taken place at different points, depends on the venue. In some cases, the operators will say, look, you, the venue owner, you should be investing in putting in an in-building network and let us use it, because then that will increase the value of your building. People will pay you more rent, so you should be the one who pays for it. Another view is, this is more and more the building owners are seeing in-building wireless as as sort of a necessary fourth utility or fifth utility, depending on how you count them, that they must have in the building. And more we see real estate developers from the beginning of the development of a building sort of accounting for, what does the wireless network need to look like. But ultimately, the value goes to the operators, and basically you are carrying traffic for the operators. You're building a neutral host or a shared infrastructure network in the building that all of the operators potentially can share, and you're actually carrying, and in some cases, a significant amount of traffic for the operators. So that in itself is inherently valuable. The other part of the value for the mobile operators is that they need to be able to support their customers, and even if they can get coverage into the building, it's probably at a very low modulation that they're supporting from one of their macro networks outside of that venue. And by doing that, they're providing capacity to their, maybe not at the performance they want, but they are providing capacity to their subscribers, but they're also using a tremendous amount of capacity from outside of that. So because of the low modulation that operators might use to support from their outdoor network, if they actually use about let's say a gigabyte of traffic that's delivered to their subscribers in that building, they're really probably saving about 3 gigabytes actually of traffic from their macro network. So there's tremendous benefit to the operators, and at least as we see it, the ultimate value goes to the operators.
If you're a venue owner or an enterprise, how do you explain that to the operator, that you're providing them with a value?
So there are two ways, and number one, this is really where the work that Wireless 2020 has done, where we feel this really helps to not only understand the value that each of these constituents, each of these players are bringing to this problem, but really understanding, how many subscribers are there in a particular, let's say a particular commercial building that is being supported for each of the operators in that market. How much traffic really is being carried by each of them. And the key to what we've seen, and this is really the basis of the whole neutral host market, as you can share an infrastructure in a multi-operator building, and we think that's becoming the norm now, where you actually have one network that's supporting all of the operators. As you go through that, the key to where neutral host agreements have started to break down is that realizing they have the operators over a barrel, the neutral host says, this is a key building. You have to come and you have to be part of this network. Therefore, we'll charge you an arm and a leg at a key strategic venue. That might be the case. Let's say it's at an airport where a neutral host has the rights to the airport. They can charge an operator realistically almost anything because they have to have coverage at the airport. So that's really where these neutral host agreements have broken down. But if you can do a cost analysis and show that for working in a shared network in a particular venue, that an operator can save money. If you can say, look, if we charge you this much on a monthly basis, it is, say, 50% or 60% of what you would pay if you had your own network in that building. Or here's how much traffic we're going to deliver to you. If this is how much traffic we're delivering for you and this is what we're charging you, it works out to $1 a gigabyte or 50 cents a gigabyte. So to be able to have those kinds of analysis at your fingertips, you can justify actually to the operators, say, look, this is a more worthwhile use of your resources than you having to invest directly in the building. And that's where the shared infrastructure model starts to provide economic benefit to everybody. That's what our analysis is showing, and that's what we believe will become really the norm as you go forward.
Yeah, and so this whole idea of shared infrastructure, of neutral host environment, I think you mentioned this to me in an email, and I wanted to follow up, but I know Wireless 2020 works all over the world. In other countries, is this the predominant sort of infrastructure tactic, this shared infrastructure?
So, you can probably talk to any of the major operators and, how much CapEx they spend, how much OpEx they spend. The expenses are tremendous. They're in a situation where as capacity continues to ramp up, it's just an ever increasing investment profile that they have to keep fulfilling year after year. Each year is higher than the last to be able to keep up with their capacity demands. And so, we think that the trend overall of shared infrastructure, really becomes the more typical arrangement as far as infrastructure is concerned, compared to any other approach. And there are a few key harbingers that we look at. Number one, you can go back a decade or more and look at how the tower business has developed. At one point, it was unthinkable for the operators not to be able to own their own towers. Eventually, they got to the standpoint of saying, okay, is there really value add here in owning our own towers? Let's lease those, let's sell those, let's capitalize those and put our money somewhere else. Another key one that we always look to is look at Canada as a market where Bell and TELUS share their networks completely. In the marketplace, they are marketing opponents, but from the standpoint of sharing infrastructure, both to give them both a better cost basis to be competitive, that makes a tremendous amount of sense. And so we look at those things, and we see shared infrastructure as one of the key themes that come over the next, say, 5 years or so. Usually when you start this discussion with the operators, the first word you hear is the C word. We have to control our network. But once they kind of see and understand the economic benefits, they aren't quite as dogmatic about owning their own infrastructure. So we see this kind of in-building economics of a shared infrastructure to be, kind of a symptom of what we'll see, more and more, maybe even more and more of the outdoor network will wind up being shared. But this is part of one of the key trends that we see overall in the wireless network, in the wireless industry.
Okay, so what are vendors doing to address this dynamic? Are they working at all to kind of lower the price point on what you need to set up a neutral host network to make that more accessible to a swath of the market that's not quite in a position to attract operator investment?
Well, here's one of the interesting things. And the key technologies today, there are others that could and will be coming. But the key technologies today, when we look at in-building, are either small cells or DAS. I'd say up to now, one model has been, if you have a venue, a building that has one tenant, and that tenant has a contract with one operator, then it's sort of a single tenant, single operator building. And something like small cells probably makes more economic sense. But as you get to what we think is more of a typical model going forward, where you have multiple tenants and therefore you have to have multiple operators, in most cases, you can assume that the population that's in a particular building, for example, say a 50-story office building that has many tenants, the population of that building probably looks similar to the market share of the operators in that particular market. So once you do that, to have small cells, you have to have a small cell supporting the frequency of each of those operators. In essence, it's 4 individual networks that you have to spread through the building, and there really is little cost advantage. Now, DAS, that's where DAS really shines, both from a technical standpoint and an economic standpoint. and that is that you're able to deploy a single network and share the infrastructure amongst all of the operators. And so you just share all of the frequency, you support all the frequencies for the operators in that building. And we think that as the environment pushes more and more for this need for multi-operators, that's where the market will go. At the moment, the DAS vendors, and just for example, CommScope and Solid and JMA and Corning and those people, those are the products that, active DAS systems that they're developing are ideally suited for this multi-operator environment. Curiously, the small cell operators, this has been their weakness in that we have not seen a small cell product that can effectively address multiple operators. So we'll look to see some developments from the operators, from the vendors in the future to see if they can solve that problem. But that's where we see the key differentiation and where the vendors are right now.
All right, and I was hoping you would sort of call attention to an upcoming event that Wireless 2020 is putting on, where a lot of these topics are going to be discussed in really good detail, and that's the Tower and Small Cell Summit, right?
So the Tower and Small Cell Summit is coming up next week in Las Vegas. It's kind of a sub-conference to the CTIA show that'll be going on all week in Las Vegas. And very much so both in terms of the technical challenges of how do you effectively deploy these systems, the backhaul in terms of supporting these systems, and more the strategy and the business models will also be discussed. And it's interesting that it seems that of late that it's really more on the business model side that's really holding back the market more than the technology challenges. So that's where the work that Wireless 2020 does in terms of working with our operator clients. One of the things that's interesting about the in-building market today is the definition of who's an operator is kind of changing rapidly. Of course, there are the mobile operators. There are the venue owners. In some cases, are stepping up and saying, look, at the very least, I know I have a lot of value here. Let me really understand the economics of this so I can maximize my value. Or can I even become the neutral host operator myself? Some are looking at that. Fiber companies who maybe have the main fiber connection into a building and say, well, how can I increase the value of the connection that I'm providing? Am I the one who's positioned well to provide that neutral host? And then, of course, there are companies like Extenet and Mobility and American Tower and Crown Castle that would like to play that role of the neutral host and make the investment and make a deal with the mobile operators to give them access to a high value venue. So really all of these will be discussed next week, and it certainly will be interesting, and at least from our viewpoint, there's a lot of open pieces here. It's not totally clear how this comes together, but in any event, we see it as one of the key developments, and we look forward to the conference next week.
Yeah, I got a chance to attend last year, and it really was an informative, high-quality event, and I know we'll have an editorial presence out there this year as well. So, Randall, thank you so much for discussing some of these issues around in-building wireless with me, and look forward to maybe speaking with you later in the year to see how the market's developing a little bit.
HetNet Happenings is a production of RCR TV. To reach Sean Kinney or to suggest a show topic for HetNet Happenings, you can reach Sean at skinney@rcrwireless.com. On Twitter at Sean Kinney RCR. To find out more about the latest in HetNet and all things wireless, dig into rcrwireless.com.